Oh, this is interesting. I've been seeing today an article being passed around on Twitter. Like I would see the image of it, but I could never find it until I found a video by Don Fan. I think is how you pronounce her name. And I thought I would just read it and respond to it. Demon Slayer manga outsells entire American comic book industry, which is nothing new. Oh, this is from January 15th, 2021. But again, this is not surprising. I also don't want. I'm almost thinking of backing out. No, I'm doing it. But this isn't that surprising because, as she pointed out, comics in the West have become safe, bland, just doing the same thing over and over, and they don't make anything new. They don't do anything creative. They just piggyback on what came before, what's already been established, and it's kind of boring. Manga, on the other hand, if the artist or author gets an idea, they just run with it, and maybe they do well. And if they do well, it goes mainstream or it sells a lot. Then it becomes an anime, that sells even more, and then it goes to the West where it's going to sell even more. And there seems to be less restraints on what they're able to do. Also, manga isn't political as much. In the West, there's always, as she pointed out, there's always this need for representation or a particular political slant, which is annoying as hell. It's kind of one of the reasons why I don't buy American comics anymore. I don't even try to read them online for free, unless it's a certain character I actually care about. So there's that. And it's kind of deserved on the American industry's part. They brought this on themselves, and I feel not an inch of sympathy for them. Anyway, the article reads as follows. Demon Slayer or Kimetsu no Yaiba manga has sold more copies than the entire American comic book industry. Talk about embarrassing. While comic book companies like Marvel and DC have absolutely no idea why their comic books aren't selling. Demon Slayer has sold 100 million copies, while American comic books altogether have only sold 15 million units. Christ, I didn't think they were doing that bad. I thought they were doing bad, but this is bad. This is like take Old Yeller in the backyard and put him down bad. Keep in mind that they are also counting manga that is being sold in America. That means that the number of comic books sold themselves are much lower. Artists in Marvel and DC companies that are the reason why they are not selling. Oh, wait, now, artists in Marvel and DC complain that the reason why they are not selling enough comic books is because of the fans. They blame the fans and attack the fans. While manga artists in Japan believe that the reason why manga like Demon Slayer is so successful is because of the story and serving the fans. Yeah, because the people in the West, they have become entitled little, in lack of a better word, cunts. Entitled pricks. It's like, are you good enough to be... Like, Yellow Flash brings this up a lot, and I think it is an apt description. Or a ideal. It hits the nail on the head so hard, it almost feels like overkill. It's like, are you good enough to be my fan? Like, you see this with the voice actors in the West. It's, are you good enough to be my fan? I see the same thing with artists in the West who make comics and writers in comics. They are very entitled. They think they are entitled to money and to popularity. They're not. They deserve what they're getting. Two different perspectives. Many American comic book creators don't really think like they used to. Sure, comic books have political messages, however, when a comic book is made to push a political agenda, that it is when readers run away. Comic book art readers know when they are being brainwashed into thinking a certain way. It's true, they're not as stupid as these people in the comic book industry like to think they are. It is the very reason why Disney Star Wars failed in the first place, and it's always a plus when they give a middle finger to Disney. The focus is not not to satisfy comic book readers, but rather to convince or to convert to a political ideology. Comic book readers don't want to think about politics when reading comics. They want to be entertained. Some comic books have political messages as a way to make a statement, like V for Vendetta. However, there was no agenda of trying to convert people into the ideology. It was just a statement, a story. This is why more and more American readers switch to Japanese manga, because it has not been inundated with political things. Manga focuses on telling a good story, which is what Marvel and DC are not doing. And that's the end of the article, and yeah. yeah, that's ow. That's kind of an ouch for for DC and Marvel. Like, I feel no sympathy for them. If they run out of business or if they go out of business, they have no one but themselves to blame. They have earned every bit of it, and it's their own fault. Right? People like Jerry Conway, they like to bitch about manga and call it pedophilic or misogynistic. No, they pander to their audience, which is what these people in the West should be doing, not pandering to minorities who don't even buy their comics, or the people who complain on Twitter but don't actually buy the comics. So instead of pandering to them, you should be pandering to the audience. I'm not saying have fan service every 10 seconds, but would it kill you to do something that would please the audience? Instead of just giving the middle finger to them 24/7 and expecting them to give you money as a result. Like, I don't go to a movie theater to be lectured. Granted, I don't go to a movie theater at all anymore, and can't even if I wanted to. But still, I don't go to a restaurant to be told the waiter's political agenda. I go there to eat. Like, if I went to a restaurant, which I don't do as much anymore, but hey, if I did, and I ordered some food, and the waiter just got snarky with me with her political agenda, I would want to leave. I wouldn't even complain. I would just leave. The people with me probably would complain. I wouldn't. I'd be like, fuck you guys, I'm going home. But yeah, that's the article, and again, I feel not an ounce of sympathy for these people. They deserve what they get, and they deserve what's coming. And it's only going to get worse. And one more thing, there's an add-on here, Hellsing live-action movie adaptation. Fuck me. That is going to be a nightmare. Like, not because of the content of Hellsing, it's going to be a nightmare because they're going to botch it. $5 says they botch it. No more than 5, actually. Because no one can do a manga or anime adaptation justice. But back to the article. This kind of just speaks to the ineptitude of the comic book industry here. Like, I don't think they had this problem in France with bande dessinée. Then again, these are the French. Arrogance is kind of second nature to them, so people, even if they are, I imagine people are used to it by now. In America, not so much. We're used to a little elitism, but not, hey, we're better than you, give us money. And just, Jesus Christ, holy hell. It's like they want to go bankrupt. Actually, they might want to. Like, they are worse at doing their job than politicians are today. Actually, no, the politicians are still worse. They both seem to be trying to cause self-destruction and detriment as possible. They want it as fast as possible and as much as possible, and they're trying to do as much damage as possible. They're kind of like how Jordan Peterson once described Hitler. He said, no, Hitler was just trying to do as much damage as possible. That's what these assholes sound like. Although I will say this, there is one downside to manga is, and this is something that Dan Finn pointed out, people in Japan who make the mangas, they don't get paid as much. In fact, it sounds like they're outsourcing to places like Korea. But yeah, they don't get paid as much. They don't have money for an apartment. According to her, they actually give you an apartment to work in and they pay you less money. Like, the conditions sound awful. That's the only downside about manga is it sounds like the conditions are just deplorable. That's the only downside for me is, like, I love mangas, but it's kind of depressing knowing that something I love, it comes at the cost of some people living under miserable conditions and barely having any free time. That's probably the only upside to the West comic book industry and the bande dessinée industry is, as far as I know, they get paid normal wages. They get paid normally. Granted, at some point, people in the West are going to start outsourcing comics to other countries. It's just a matter of time. I would bet money on that. Another thing is, people in Japan, they're not as prudish or puritanical, as far as I know, as people in the West have become. Especially in the comic book industry, they are insufferable as Puritans go. Like, I hate Puritans. Puritanism needs to die. A slow, agonizing death. Like, I mean the ideology, not the actual Puritan people. They just need to be told to fuck off. But, like, Japan isn't afraid to pander to, like, certain fetishes. Again, this is something she pointed out. I'm just repeating it. But yeah, they're not afraid to appeal to certain niche audiences or fetishes. Like you got masochist, like you'll have all sorts of weird characters in manga. You'll have masochists, sadists, perverts. Like not the creepy kind of perverts, as far as I know. But then again, I only read certain mangas. And they're also not afraid to touch on dark subjects. This is an original thought of mine. Is like I look at Goblin Slayer and Shield Hero. Like those two subjects, they would never let you touch on that in the comic book industry. They would never have the balls to do it because in the West, our comic book industries are a bunch of left-wing idiots who have decided that certain things are taboo. You can't talk about them, even if it seems stupid that you shouldn't be talking about these. Like rape is an awful thing, so why you're trying to suppress the conversation about it would be stupid. Or at least they wouldn't show it in such a graphic way as Goblin Slayer did. I mean, it still didn't show the green sausage going into the hallway, but you know what's happening. It's as one guy put it, it's clearly defined. You know what's happening. You have to be an idiot not to realize it. As for the false rape allegations, they also wouldn't touch that because, again, this is a left-wing industry, and it's always believe all women with them. You know, they also say believe all victims, but then they silence the victims of false rape. Kind of contradictory. And that's a whole other tangent that I'm not even going to bother touching. But yeah, that is my overall thought is just Japan does things, like despite the bad pay they get, at least they are willing to go to certain places. They don't even have to have a plot at the time. They just have to have that one initial idea and run with it. And they'll do okay. Somehow. Well, some of them do. Some of them go the way of the quintessential quintuplets. Some of them go the way of Tokyo Ghoul. Well, actually, that wasn't a bad ending. It was better than Attack on Titans. And some of them go the way of Blood Lad, which... yeah, I'm not even going to touch on that. That ending was just so confusing. That needs a sequel. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments. And remember, the game was rigged from the start.